Hey YouTube family, welcome to this video where we're going to talk about the truth about inspiration, which is a follow-up from my previous video about feeding your muse and the necessity of inspiration. So go check that video out after this if you haven't seen it already. In this video, I'm going to share with you what I understand about inspiration currently in a holistic framework, like the roots of it, the juice of it, so that you can empower yourself to get inspired and stay inspired without having kind of false ideas about what it is or putting it on a pedestal. Power to you. That's the core of this. So in this video, we're going to cover the original meaning of inspiration, the three main components of inspiration, like what builds up inspiration, the key to being able to get inspired, some of the gifts of inspiration, and then wrapping up with a journaling prompt so that you can dive into your own self-discovery of what inspiration is for you. So let's hop into it. The root, the origin meaning of inspiration is really, really beautiful and fundamental if we want to comprehend what inspiration is. So the word inspire has its roots in the Latin word inspirare, which means to breathe into, to inflame with divine influence. Okay, that's the end of the video. Bye. That's all you need to know. So basically in ancient times, it was recognized that the gods, right, the greater elder powers, the creators of the universe, would breathe spirit, life into people, soul, right, manifesting as ideas, thoughts, reason, emotions, inspiring them with creativity, knowledge, wisdom, which animates the physical form. So then the root of inspiration actually means the breath of life. Tapping into some really ancient languages, Hebrew, for example, ruach is a word that means breath, wind, spirit. Similarly in Arabic, hello to my beautiful benevolent ancestors, down lineage of a lot of Lebanese people. Side note, so Ru actually means spirit, breath of life as well. And the Greek word pneuma, spelt P-N-E-U-M-A, also means the vital spirit, soul, breath. You see a theme here: breath, life, spirit. This is what we're talking about when we're speaking about inspiration, the truth of inspiration. Now, I have this beautiful, beautiful book by Clarissa. I'm sure many of you know of it, but I want to read to you a really short quote which actually spoke about pneuma. And so that was really syncretic because I was reading this actually just today and I was like, oh my God, that's perfect because I'm already preparing the notes for this video. So the word pneuma, breath, shares its origins with the word psyche. They are both considered words for soul. So this was just a context for what I've just shared with you. The definition of what we're talking about when we speak of inspiration, of breath, of life, is also soul. Okay, so yeah, we can really see a theme here, and already that's really exciting, because when we speak about inspiration, there's this thought that it's this like mysterious, mystical, luminous force that is unattainable somehow. It just appears unannounced and then disappears just as quickly, and you're like, hang on a moment, what just happened? How did it, what, why, when? Okay, but if we're actually returning to the roots of what inspiration is as breath, wow, already this is attuning you to such an innate natural cycle. Inspiration exists in you, as you. You are living and breathing inspiration right now. This, however, can be used as a kind of bypass because you're just breathing. You're like, okay, cool, Sophie, I'm breathing. Where's my inspiration? Bear with me. Okay, so Should we try to hold on to inspiration if it's so ephemeral as like an in-breath and an out-breath? Or should we just allow it to flow in and out just as a butterfly does not simply arrive when it's commanded, but it visits you because you have a garden, right? You're attracting it implicitly. So because of inspiration's elusive divine qualities, inspiration can easily be overlooked, especially when we're in a society which is really favoring the sort of go-getter, talent, ability-based approach, which is very willed, right? But what I'm sure you can feel already, based on your own experience with inspiration, that this force, this animating force of spirit, this divine influence is evoked, right? It happens. It isn't necessarily willed, commanded, summoned. Yeah, kind of summoned. I'll get into that in a bit. But don't mistake this for meaning that you just have to sit around passively and do nothing, just like waiting for inspiration. We're going to get into that in a moment as well. So basically, we want to tap you into a mode of discovery, a mode of curiosity, embracing action. This I touched on in my last video about feeding your inner muse, and I gave you really practical ways that you can do that. So go check that out. I'm not going to repeat everything that I said there here. Essentially, inspiration is the animating force. It has many faces, this animating force, right? Prana, chi, so many ways to talk about a very similar thing. We're speaking about inspiration. So the three main components of inspiration, what are they? I didn't even know there were three components of inspiration. Now you do. So according to psychologists Thrash and Elliott, there are three core aspects of what inspiration is. Now, I acknowledge this is quite a psychological framework, but it's still really helpful to weave in the psychological with more of the mystical, let's say. So the three main components are 1, evocation, 2, transcendence, and 3, approach motivation. So, evocation, fairly straightforward. It's evoked spontaneously without intention necessarily. So there's a really interesting framework called I always get this phenomenology. I hear you applauding. Thank you. This is working without knowing. Similar thing. Okay, so inspiration is evoked. It happens. It emerges naturally. But what does it emerge from? We're going to get there. Transcendence. Cool. So inspiration, when it's pulsing and flowing through us, we've accessed a transcendent state. Okay, this exists beyond the purely mundane, survival-based existence where we're like limited by these sort of survival-based concerns and worries. Okay, with inspiration, there's clarity, there's awareness, there's a flavor of new possibility, that flash of of like, oh, whoa, okay. And this really, as I know you've experienced inspiration, it is truly divine, the breath of God, and not God in the Christian sense of the dude sitting in the clouds, but God in the sense of spirit, source, this soup of magic that we're a part of, the animating force that animates me, you, the table, the phone, the grass outside, the bees, the blueberries. It's all animated by the same force. Inspiration then, after the transcendent state, leads into approach motivation. So in the evocation state, we've been inspired by, okay? Inspiration has emerged. We've been inspired by something. And then once we get to approach motivation, once we gone through this sort of transcendent state, we arrive at a state where we're inspired to. Okay? The approach motivation state is where we start to strive to transmit, express, and actualize this new idea or vision that we've received in that transcendent state. So to repeat that for clarity, 1, evocation, inspired by, something emerges based on what you've been a part of, listening to, tasting, whatever it might be. You enter a transcendent state where you raise above the seemingly constricted, mundane, survival-based mechanisms of day-to-day life. And in that state, you receive a flash of insight, a vivid, ephemeral, grand vision. There's this animating experience, kind of ephemeral, right? And from that gift, you then approach motivation, where you have this energy inside you. Your inner muse is like, yes, we are ready, let's go. So you are inspired to transmit that insight, that idea, into something tangible, an action. Therefore, you are shifting into the mode of inspired by into inspired to, acting upon the inspiration. Really helpful framework. Like already it's becoming less of this elusive, I don't even know what this ephemeral thing is, into, yeah, this makes sense to me. This is tangible. One of the core things that these two people who created the framework I just shared with you discovered from their work is that what often preceded inspiration was a fundamental openness to experience. Open-mindedness is a core of how one is even inspired in the first place. Like, think about it. That's pretty obvious. If you're feeling really shut down, closed, you're not available, you're in the thing, it's like you're talking to me, but there are like 5 walls between you and me. And that's how you're relating with life. How is the breath of life going to come into you and through you and breathe inspiration into you? It's not really, right? I mean, sure, you're still going to be breathing, but there's a specific animating force which can actually access a higher state that will be a bit blocked. The open to experience is like what I've shared before. If you visually imagine a clogged up tube versus one that is open and clean. Obviously, in the first one, it's going to be really hard for liquid to flow through that. In the other one, super easy. So this is what openness to experience is about. Makes sense. Another core thing of how to really set up the framework so that you can be inspired, right? In addition to being open, just like an open-mindedness, ready to receive the world, the spark of curiosity, your inner child, your inner muse, they're like, yes, okay, we're here, we're embodied, we're connected, hi. Another thing is that inspiration isn't bound by objective worth of a thing. So, you know, it's not like you can't be inspired by the most simple thing, like walking outside in the morning and seeing the frost on the grass. That's not objectively worth anything, right? Material. So what makes something inspiring is its perceived intrinsic value, like what ignites something within you, not how much something is objectively worth or how attainable the thing is. Another core thing about inspiration which you need to know, I've alluded to this just now, recently, that action often precedes inspiration. So feeding the muse, right? It's an active process. That's what I spoke about in the last video. And as I shared in that last video, active has different forms as well. There's more of a conscious receptive active, and there's a more conscious directed active. They're kind of both happening at the same time though. Like you can't fully split the feminine and the masculine. Like that's just, I don't know, maybe it'll happen one day. maybe it happens. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that right now. But action often precedes inspiration. This is really, really important because, as I shared before, because inspiration emerges, it happens. It's not necessarily willed. In order for that to happen, you need to be in the context of that happening, right? This, of course, can happen at any time. This doesn't have to mean that you're purchasing a super expensive ticket to the other side of the world to get inspired, because remember, inspiration isn't bound to the value of something materially. It's perceived intrinsic value, which is, prior to that, coming from your willingness, your open-mindedness about being inspired in the first place. So you want to be in that state of receptivity, of openness, and you also want to feed that muse, right? With the impressions, with the energy of curiosity, with books, right? With music, with conversations with people. You want to be part of this web of existence, like sharing your energy in the mix of it all, so that you can also receive this beautiful giving and receiving energy, which is super appropriate because as I'm filming this, it's Cancer new moon. Giving and receiving love. Beautiful. So the power of inspiration is fairly self-explaining. Is that even a word? It's a word now. Self-explanatory. That's it. I've spoken to you about how you can get inspired, right? Go see my last video for more inspiration about how to get inspired as well. But now I want to speak to you about the power of it. Inspiration, both scientifically studied and lived real magical, mystical experiences, lead to say that with inspiration, people often have a stronger drive to actually master their work without being more competitive, which is really speaking to that transcendent state that we achieve with inspiration, because competition is not a transcendent state, right? It's a competitive survival based state, very very much entangled with this sort of colonialist mindset of like conquer, divide, this sort of thing. Inspiration is the thing that shifts you from competitor to creator. The creators, not that it's bound to a specific medium, it's whatever your medium is, but the creators don't care what other people are doing, not in a indifferent kind of way, but in a do your thing and do it brilliantly. I'm here doing my thing and I'm doing it brilliantly as part of this interdependent web of existence. Amazing. The creators focus on the joy of their craft, okay? The competitors, on the other hand, are in the scarcity mindset where if you succeed, that's less success for me, which obviously makes the creators in the abundance mindset. This is also what inspiration can do. The more we can be in the way of inspiration, the more we are accessing transcendent states which shake us out of the survival-based competitive mindset, which is massive. We want that. Within the competitor mindset, it's a lot about extrinsic motivation, which I've touched on before, which is essentially that you're motivated by the achieving or the attaining of something material or outside of yourself. Whereas from the creator stance, the abundance consciousness, right, you are accessing intrinsic motivation, which is the self-generated force motivation from within. You are motivated by the joy of the thing, by the wonder at the capacity to learn and grow for your benefit, for the benefit of the world, whatever it is that you are truly motivated by from within. Not, I'm going to be super rich and famous, I'm going to get like 1 million likes, you know. But inspiration is really the force enables a greater sense of self-belief, greater creativity, greater perceived competence, greater self-esteem, greater optimism, and these are all emerging from that transcendent state. Are you starting to feel how these limits, these concerns, these doubts, these fears, they exist in that non-transcendent survival-based state? And it's like we're building that muscle of accessing the transcendent state where we're not bound by false limitations, where we're not wasting our precious energy on being in fear consistently. Fear is also still necessary, like it's here for a reason, but everything in its own balance, right? From motivation, there's a greater sense of purpose. And if that motivation is more consistent, then that sense of purpose is going to be more consistent, especially when that inspiration is honed in on a specific direction, which, funnily enough, inspiration helps you with. One thing I do want to clarify, though, is that based on my own reflection, I really feel that inspiration isn't necessarily motivation. They work hand in hand with each other, but inspiration isn't entirely motivation. Motivation emerges from inspiration. And perhaps inspiration emerges from motivation too. There's that sort of reciprocal dynamic. But inspiration like inherently touches an essential part of yourself. Like that's the thing that inspires you. If it's not touching something like somewhat inexplicable but rich and vital within you, then it's more tapping into motivation. What's an example I can give you? Let's say that you're feeling a little bit lost in life and you don't truly know what your medium of purpose is, like the way that you share your innate gifts with the world to make a meaningful impact in a way that is in your own lane, so to speak. And let's say that there are some people in your community or people that you know online who are a living embodiment of someone who's successfully doing their thing well and beautifully and with integrity. And that could be in a medium that might not be super familiar to you, or it is. And there's this sense of like, oh, I can do what they're doing. So sure, there might be some kind of inspiration in there, which is tapping in that essential part of, I also want to be sovereign and a creator of creating this masterpiece of my life, living up to my full potential. But the motivation could come in as like, okay, I feel super motivated because I feel like there's this sort of competitiveness in me and I need to go do something, right? It's a purely like, it's like that's how I see motivation. It's like, okay, so if it's in someone else's sphere, let's say of inspiration that you're tuning into, what could be happening as well is that they're so established in their zone of genius, let's say, they're so connected to their pillar of inspiration, to their channel of the breath of life, that it could be somehow like seductive for you, that it consumes you, and then you become a vessel to manifest their dream. There's this word which I must say I don't know the exact meaning of, but it comes to mind. It's like your daimon. The daimon being this also sort of like your creative counterpart. It's like that energy, the creative energy that can somehow like possess you to maintain a sort of inspired state. It's a personified version of that. And there's this really cool quote by Rudyard Kipling, which says that when your daimon is in charge, do not try to think consciously. Drift, wait, obey. the energy of the diamond is very much like it's happening now, it's 2 a.m., but I'm flooding you with a wave of inspiration, of ideas, and you will not be able to go to sleep until you get up and you go write that down. This is kind of like where the diamond comes in. Now, just to tie that back to what I'm trying to get to, which I apologize if it's not fully crystallized, but bear with me. What I want to touch on is how, if, for example, you haven't formed an authentic relationship with what inspiration really is for you versus like a motivation copy paste kind of thing, then someone else's daimon, the thing that animates them, the thing that motivates them, you could say that that's their inner muse, but it's not quite. Then that energy could try to like possess you. This is not really at all trying to scare you. And when I say possess, maybe it's a thought for another day. Once this is actually more crystallized in myself so I can communicate it much more efficiently. The point is, inspiration and motivation are friends, but they're not exactly the same thing. So if you want to carve your own path, not just copy and paste someone else's path who you feel somewhat inspired by, motivated by, then you need to form your own relationship with what inspiration is for you and to you, and what inspiration activates within you. Okay, if this is the breath of life, of spirit, of soul that animates the physical form, how does it animate you? Not how it animates someone else, not how it manifests through someone else, not what medium they're using, not how successful they are, supposedly, seemingly, from you stand, but how does inspiration animate you? And when you're in an inspired state, what are the kind of things that you're drawn to? Is it pen and paper? Do you feel the need to write? Do you feel the need to sing? Do you have this amazing idea that you need to just whip together a vision board, or you have an idea for a course, or you just feel that you need to go outside and be with a tree and just be like, whoa, I just really need to sit here right now. I just need to be with this. There's something that animates you from within, which almost like pulls back the veil and gives you insight into that's where you're going. This is what's possible for you. And you didn't even know that those doors existed, which just opened before your very eyes. Or eye. So, inspiration, as we've touched on, is not willed, it happens. Knowing this should free you somewhat from the pressure to fixate on making inspiration happen, like shaking the proverbial breath of God and saying, give me inspiration. No! It could work. I'm not saying that it won't. However, what's going to be more efficient is a more implicit way. Explicit meaning like the give me the thing now, and implicit like you create the garden, the butterfly comes. The implicit way is exposing yourself to opportunities, to experiences, to all the things that I spoke about in the video about feeding your inner muse, from which inspiration springs, right? You're creating the garden that the butterfly is then attracted to. And inspiration is totally mythical and divine, but just like you wouldn't put a person on a pedestal, don't put inspiration on a pedestal either. If you do that, you're kind of giving your power away or leaking your power when you could be tending to your garden and inspiration emerges from the fertile soil. Expose yourself to the fresh impressions. Expose yourself to inspiring videos, knowledge, texts, books, courses, workshops. Just be out there in the world. But also, don't forget to go within. It is a within without dynamic. Because inspiration emerges from within, you also need to have a relationship with within. Now, I could go on. I also really want to leave you with a question, because at the end of the day, as I've touched on, this really landing for you is you experiencing what I'm talking about, not just hearing me speak about it. Hearing me speak about it could be touching you in that essential part of self, which knows exactly what I'm talking about and wants you to experience it for yourself. So it's starting to animate the physical form with inspiration, with spirit, with vitality. But really, I want you to discover what it is and feels like and looks like for yourself. Because you've already experienced it. You already have a relationship with inspiration. My intention from this video is that you have a greater comprehension of what is this ephemeral, elusive thing that just happens, okay? And how can it stop being a thing that just randomly happens and being a thing that happens, but in a more conscious way, because I am consciously, actively experiencing new things, learning new things, going to the galleries, whipping out a piece of paper and just deciding that I'm going to try draw my dream from last night. Okay, this is the juice. So the question that I have for you, which I recommend you take the time after this video, even if it's just for 10 minutes, and journal. Answer the question, what does inspiration tangibly look like for me? Concrete, tangible items are what we're speaking about. And when I mean concrete and tangible, like think about in your own life. Yes, it's this beautiful, essential, ephemeral, vibrant energy. But what does that, like, from what has that emerged? What does that inspiration tangibly look like? Does it tangibly look like the process of doing an artwork? Does it tangibly look like scheduling into your calendar for 2 hours every week doing a specific activity, or blocking out a time for adventure? Tangibly, right? Down to earth. Bring it in. Ground it so that you can start to form a more consistent relationship with inspiration. Yeah, have a go with that. It can be a little bit difficult to sort of tangibly speak about something that is so inherently non-tangible. It animates the thing that leads to a tangible thing. But try to bring them together so that you can feel more empowered, knowing that inspiration is here and available, and you're already a vessel through which inspiration flows. So why not be that more consciously, so that you can harness this power to live your soul-aligned life? Bless you. I'm super excited for you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and stay tuned for future videos where we're going to dive into further topics that I'm really passionate about, and let's see where this goes. Okay, see you next time, and follow me on the Instagram if you haven't already. Say hey, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.